In this video, we talk about creating functions in Python. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. Now, if you don't know already, a function is essentially just a collection of code that executes when you call it, and it does certain things. And usually you use a function for tasks that you do again and again and again. Now, Python has a bunch of pre-established functions already created that you can use, but you could also create your own for the projects that you're working on. So let me write up here a quick comment. So #hashtag, that means it's a comment inside of Python, which means that Python's not going to execute this code. And a function is a collection of code. All right, so there's our little definition. All right, so, and you've seen these functions probably before, like print len of this is a string. You run it, and len, the length function, counts the number of characters in a string and returns the number of characters for us. So that's an example function that is built into Python. Now we can go ahead and, of course, create our own functions. So to do that, we need to define the function. To define a function, you type in def, define, and then you type out the name of your function, so my function, and then you end it with parentheses, and then a colon, and then you go on to the next line, and it's indented 4 spaces. So basically this is the same formatting structure as your loops, so your for loops, while loops, as well as conditional statements, if, elif, else, with a colon and being indented. So anything indented underneath this function area is part of the function. So that's how Python keeps things organized, is based off of your indentions. So let's give it some code to execute as part of the function. So I'll just say print, this code has been executed. All right, so that's what we want this function to do, is print that string right there. So let's come on down to our line, and to call or execute a function, we simply have to do my function and then run it. And you see, just like that, this code has been executed. So that is simple enough, right? We created a function and then we executed that function just by typing it in, just like that. Now, you can also enter arguments into functions, just like with that len example. The argument I entered was the string, so it could count the characters in that string. So we can also, in our own personal functions, we can have our own arguments. So for example, I could type in x, and then I can go ahead and use this argument in my function itself. So we have this code has been executed, and I'm going to do new line, and I'm going to do times x. And then I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to enter a 3 in here. So my function, and then I got a 3, which is where this x is looking for. I can run it, and you see that it went through and executed line essentially 3 times, because it just multiplied my string here by 3, which equals 3 lines being printed out. I'm going to do some more stuff with arguments in just a minute, so you'll see another example or two. But let's say that for whatever reason I didn't put an argument when I was calling the function. Let's see what happens. We get an error message because it's looking for that argument, that x. It needs something in there. So we could go ahead and set a default value, and we just do equals something. So if I do equals 1, run it, we see that it was executed 1 time. And then if I entered a 3 in here, like it would do 3 times. So basically the default value runs if there's no value set here. So I just wanted to point out that you can set default values very easily for your functions, and that way hopefully things won't break if somebody leaves out an argument. All right, so let's go ahead and create a function that's a little bit more complex than just printing a string x number of times. So let's do one that's more realistic. So we'll do def or define, and we'll say volume. So a math equation here, and we got length times width times height. So we're going to take in 3 arguments for this function. We have our colon, and then we go ahead and write our function here. So if we did print, and we did length times width times height, and then we come down here and we execute our function real quick, volume 1, 2, 3, run it real quick, and we got 6 for our answer. So 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 3 is 6, so that looks like it works correctly. So that's pretty cool, right? We have a function now that can print out a volume. So whoa, cool. All right, but now there's kind of like a slight problem with this function because it is kind of limited. So what it does is, it takes in these arguments and then it prints out the answer, this 6 here. And, that might be what we want, maybe, but probably not. We probably want to be able to use this volume somewhere else, this 6 number somewhere else. Like maybe we have multiple containers that we want to, measure and do math with, something like that. We have, maybe 10 different containers, different sizes, and we're going to use this volume function a bunch of times and, add it all up. So if that was our objective, let's say, then this print option is not the correct option, because if it just prints a number, we can't use that number somewhere else. For example, I can't do get the volume, multiply it by 3, and run it. We get an error message because it doesn't understand what's going on here. So print is the wrong word we'd want to use. We'd probably want to use return to return our number. And so if we use return instead of print, it's going to return the value, and then we can do stuff with that value. Like we see we have an 18 here. Now this output number is essentially something Jupyter does to help us track what is being output by our function. But if we actually wanted to print the value, we'd have to wrap it in the print function like so. And you see now we got 18 printed out. Also, when you're using return in your functions, you can use your functions to set variables. So I could be like bottle is equal to volume, and then 2, 3, 4, and then I could go ahead and print out bottle and run it real quick, and you see that it will return the actual volume of our bottle, versus if I was trying to print it, I'd get some sort of weird message here that says none. So just to recap, as a rule of thumb, you want to use return in your functions in order to actually return the value or the output of the function. The only time you want to use print inside of a function is if you want to like hard code something as part of your function. But otherwise, return is the correct option for functions. I just want to hopefully make that clear, that return is the proper way unless you're trying to hard code something with print. And so that's it for this video. We covered quite a bit of information on functions, but hopefully you understood it and hopefully enjoyed it and found it helpful. And if you did, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, anything like that. And I hope that you have a great rest of the day.